Welcome on Lipnice Castle in Czech Republic. In the harsh and wild region, in the country with ancient impenetrable forests, one of many Bohemian castles was founded in the beginning of the 14th century. Though it wasn't a royal one, it was similar to royal castles with its sheer size, a pride of the mighty House of Lichtenberg, Lipnice. Almost 700 years ago, it was built on the rocky bump between two hills, to protect its wide surroundings, the town of Brod with its silver mines, and trade routes that ran through this region of the Sazava River, on the border of the Kingdom of Bohemia and the Margraviate of Moravia. The Lipnice Castle was founded around 1310 by the Lichtenberg House, one of the lines of the ancient Bohemian House of Ránovci. Raymond of Lichtenberg owned the nearby town Německý Brod, which provided sufficient resources for the construction of a residence castle. The first direct reference of the Lipnice Castle dates back to 1314, and mentions Burgrave Bernard. In 1316, Henry of Lichtenberg, together with other Bohemian noblemen and their 8 castles, pledged Lipnice to a young Bohemian King John of Luxembourg, in exchange for his relative Henry of Lipa, then imprisoned at the Tyrov Castle. In 1319, the castle became a royal property for a short period of time, and King John pledged it to Henry of Lipa in exchange for the Zittau region. Thus Lipnice was under control of the leading aristocrat of the country, the man who already served to the 5th king in a row, and his house was just as important as foreign duke houses. After Henry's death in 1329, the control over Lipnice came into the hands of his sons. In 1335, they invited King John and his son Charles to the castle. Charles IV later acquired the castle, and on November 9, 1370, he granted the town rights to the town of Lipnice, specifically to brew beer and sell it. As the chronicle has it, this statement used to be the oldest and the rarest privilege of the Lipnice archive, and also a nice memory of the father of the homeland who, despite many things on his mind, never forget about drinks for his loving subjects. In 1376, the king pledged Lipnice to the Kunstadt House, and 1379 it was sold to Vitus of Landstein. King Wenceslas IV then made Lipnice a hereditary domain of the House of Landstein. Vitus's son Wilhelm founded a chapter as part of the castle chapel, and built the village of Vilimavic under the castle, still bearing his name. After Wilhelm's death, the domain of Lipnice was inherited by his daughter Catherine, who gave it to Cech of Wartenberg as a dowry. Cech, the Burgrave of Prague and an avid supporter of Master Jan Hus, initiated the complaint to the Constance Council in 1415, protesting against Hus's sentence. On March 6, 1417, the Lord of Wartenberg captured the Prague bishop Hermann, and forced him, under threat of violence, to consecrate the first Hussite priests in the Lipnice chapel. Later, in 1482, this tradition was followed up by the consecration of priests by the Protestant bishop Augustine of Sanctuarian at Lipnice. After Cech's death, Lipnice became property of Oldrich of Rosenberg. The real ruler of Lipnice, however, was the commander of Tabor Hussites and the Burgrave of Lipnice, Jan Smil of Krems. At first, Oldrich made concessions and confirmed Smil's right for the Lipnice domain, but in 1436, he imprisoned Smil and had him executed. Then he sold Lipnice to another Hussite commander, Nicholas Turka of Lipa. Thus, the castle became the center of the domain of one of the most important Bohemian Protestant houses. Nicholas's son Burian had already become famous during the Hussite Wars, and later he was a loyal supporter and advisor to King George Podiebrad. At this time, the importance of Lipnice as a defensive fortress increased, to protect the region against the raids of George's opponents, led by Zdeněk of Sternberg, based in nearby Jilava. Burian II, Turka of Lipa, son of Burian, was the junior royal chamberlain. During his reign, the House of Turka rose to a new level. It was him and his son John who rebuilt Lipnice into a late Gothic residential castle in the beginning of the 16th century. The domain remained in the hands of the house until 1561, when it was bought by Count Francis of Thurn. The Thurns rebuilt the castle again, this time in Renaissance style. Lipnice was the place where the famous General Matthias Thurn was born and brought up. In 1693, the domain was acquired by John Rudolf Turka of Lipa, so the castle was returned to the hands of its previous owners. The early 17th century was the time of the tragic Bohemian Revolt, which resulted in the downfall of the independent Kingdom of Bohemia, and the breakout of the 30 Years' War.